This part 3 video discusses how Germany and China's latest strategy to lay an economic siege to the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel to start the Third World War will fulfill Bible prophecies. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. Part 1 of this series of videos discuss Germany and China's attempts since 2014 to start the Third World War. None of these plans succeeded. Then German masquerader prophets and guards church advised them that their attempts did not succeed because they were not in line with the sequence of end time events as prophesied in the Bible. They advised the Germans that the defeat of the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel by German led Europe with other alliance partners must be preceded by an economic siege of about 390 days or 13 months. That's why Germany and China's strategy to start the war has changed. Now they are planning an economic siege of the United States and Britain first. It seems far-fetched to most people that a Germany, China, and India-led alliance would certainly lay an economic siege of the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. For centuries, these nations have ensured that international trade flows freely with their ability to patrol the seas and oceans. The US still has a powerful navy. Germany, China, and India being able to lay an economic siege of the United States and British Commonwealth nations seems unthinkable. But consider the fact that they have tried many tactics since 2014 to start the Third World War. They still want to start the war. The USA and Russia don't want a world war. They have all the land and resources they need for their own use. But Germany, China, and India are deficient in land and resources. They are willing to fight a world war to control them. Germany's age-old goal of ruling the world has not changed for the past more than 4,200 years since the time of their original patriarch Asher, the grandson of Noah. Their actions are also driven by prophecy. They have had the confidence in their ability to fight a shooting war with the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel since 2014 when they first started trying to provoke a shooting war. They've already done so against Russia using Ukraine as a proxy. How much easier would it be for them to start an economic siege first as compared to provoking a shooting war? Once they make the decisions to use this option, they could begin implementing it within days and weeks. Then part 1 and part 2 videos provided information on how Germany and China have already taken steps that make it easy for them to implement an economic siege of the United States, British Commonwealth nation, and Israel. They have built an enormous amount of economic, financial, and military leverage to convince many nations and peoples to fall in line with their plans, using threats and coercion where necessary to severely restrict trade with the white English-speaking peoples, which effectively would be an economic siege. The siege could begin clandestinely using persuasion and threats where necessary, but would soon become obvious to our nations when the goods they want are not being supplied and there are few nations willing to buy their goods and services. The steps that Germany and China have already taken that would make it easy for them to implement an economic siege include: number one, they have German masqueraders and their allies, numbering nearly half the population in our countries, solidly behind them. The reason is that they have murdered nearly 10 people of million white people of non-German ancestry in the United States alone. In most cases, more than one person got credit for one murder. Therefore, the number of people claiming credit for murder could be 20 to 30 million. Most of these murders were committed decades ago. By now, the murderers have had children and grandchildren. Let's say, on average, each murderer has had 2 children who then have married spouses. Some of the families of murderers, say half, would have married their children among themselves That means the original 25 million murderers would have married around 12 million spouses outside the murderer group, leading to about 18.5 million married families. With 2 children per family, they would have about 37 million children, making a total of 74 million people in the families. As we continue the same process to the third generation, we can see that the people in the murderers' families number well over 100 million. The murderers are being brought to justice by being put to death at the pace of hundreds every week. The remaining millions want to avoid being put to death. That's why they will wholeheartedly support Germany's effort to start a war with the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel and conquer these nations. Number two, the powerful navy and the military of the United States can be brought to a standstill in very short order because German masqueraders and their allies are well represented and will not obey orders that are in US interest but will do what is in German and Chinese interest. In this regard, the prophecy in Ezekiel 7:14 comes to mind. They have blown the trumpet even to make all ready, meaning for war, but none goes to the battle, for my wrath is upon all the multitude thereof. So this prophecy comes to mind. Could sabotage by German masqueraders and their allies in a military and top leadership be the cause? It's definitely a strong possibility. Number three, German masquerader leaders in the United States, Britain and Israel, with their support of Ukraine in its war with Russia, have driven Russia away from themselves into the waiting arms of China as it faces an existential threat from Germany and NATO. Number four, with the new friendship between China and Russia, de-dollarization of the global economy has begun. China-Russia trade will be denominated in the Chinese yuan. China has brokered a deal to restore relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. China gets 40% of its hydrocarbons from the Gulf region. It's likely China has plans to denominate trade between the three nations in the yuan rather than the dollar. India has also signed an agreement with 18 countries, including Germany, United Kingdom, and Russia, to use the Indian rupee to settle trade transactions. With these nations no longer relying on the dollar, implementing a siege of the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel becomes that much easier. Number five, China has built massive leverage over the economies of many nations due to its Belt and Road Initiative, building dams to control the water flow into rivers of the Southeast and South Asia, and control of supply chains for many industries which export goods to the United States and Britain. Number six, Allies' victory in World War II hinged on control of sea and other gates and strategic islands in the world, such as the Panama Canal, Suez Canal, Gibraltar, Singapore, the Strait of Malacca, Sri Lanka, Malta, and many others. Now the Panama Canal, Suez Canal, Gibraltar, and Singapore and Sri Lanka and others are controlled by China. God prophesied in Deuteronomy 28 verses 50 to 52, a nation of fierce countenance, meaning Germany and its alliance partners, which shall not regard the person of the old nor show favor to the young, and he shall eat the fruit of your cattle and the fruit of your land until you be destroyed, which also shall not leave you either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of your kine, meaning cows, or flocks of your sheep until he has destroyed you. And he shall besiege you in all your gates until your high and fenced walls come down, wherein you trust, throughout all your land. And he shall besiege you in all your gates throughout all your land, which the Lord your God has given you. So that when the United States and British Commonwealth nations, when our key gates will be controlled by our enemies, so eventually they will control all of them. Number seven, China has built relationships with the Mexican drug cartels, which can be used to disrupt USA Mexico trade by controlling transportation. Number eight, Much of the American information technology industry is in control of Indians allied with Germany and China. They can cause major disruptions in all aspects of life in America and create chaos in days and weeks. Again, the prophecy of Ezekiel 7:14 comes to mind. They have blown the trumpet even to make ready for war, but none goes to the battle, for my wrath is upon all the multitude thereof. Could it be that our military communication systems are hacked and the orders to go to war cannot be transmitted? This is also a distinct possibility. Number 9. Iran, allied with China, is spreading its tentacles in the Middle East and is a deadly enemy of the United States because of the sanctions imposed on it. It continues to fight the small number of USA forces stationed in Syria and has shown strong willingness to join a war against the United States in any form. Number 10. Israel is on a course of self destruction, no doubt due to the presence of German masqueraders in the Israeli Knesset and government. And the Palestinians are always ready to do Germany's bidding and fight the Jews. Thus, Germany, China, and India have already shored up alliances and built economic leverage over nations around the world to implement an economic siege of the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel on short notice of weeks and a few months. So, how will the economic siege fulfill Bible prophecy? We must remember that the United States, British Commonwealth nation, and the Jewish state of Israel will fall together according to Hosea 5 verse 5. And the pride of Israel does testify to his face. Therefore shall Israel and Ephraim fall in their iniquity, Judah also shall fall with them. This had not happened to the ancient houses of Judah and Israel, because they fell separately, one Israel to the Assyrians and Judah to the Babylonians. Therefore, this is a prophecy for our future. Then Hosea 5 verse 7 tells us that they will fall in a 30-day war, which states, they have dealt treacherously against the Lord, for they have begotten strange children. Now shall a month, meaning 30 days, devour them with their portions. So, besides the prophecy in Deuteronomy 28:50-52 already mentioned, which indicates that the defeat of the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel will be preceded by our enemies taking control of sea and land gates possessed by them earlier, there are two key prophecies that provide details about this war that must be harmonized to understand the scenario that will play out concerning the conquest of the United States, British Commonwealth nation, and Israel by German-led Europe with other alliance partners after the siege has begun. The first prophecy is Ezekiel 5 verses 1-2, which states, And you, son of man, take a sharp knife, take a barber's razor, and cause it to pass upon your head and upon your beard. Then take balances to weigh and divide the hair. You shall burn with fire a third part in the midst of the city when the days of the siege are fulfilled. And you shall take a third part and smite about it with a knife, and a third part you shall scatter in the wind, and I will draw out a sword after them. This prophecy indicates that the Israelite countries, meaning United States, Britain, Canada, White South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, are first going to be besieged, most likely an economic siege for a period of about 390 days. That siege is described in Ezekiel 4 verses 3-6. Then take an iron pan and place it on an iron wall. Place it as an iron wall between you and the city, and turn your face toward it. It will be under siege, and you shall besiege it. This shall be a sign to the people of Israel. Then lie on your left side and put the sin of the people of Israel upon yourself. You are to bear their sin for the number of days you lie on your side. I have assigned you the same number of days as the years of their sin. So for 390 days you will bear the sin of the people of Israel. After you have finished this, lie down again, this time on your right side, and bear the sin of the people of Judah. I have assigned you 40 days, a day for each year. These prophecies clearly indicate that the destruction of the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel, meaning people of Israel mentioned in this prophecy, and the Jewish state of Israel mentioned as Judah in this prophecy, will be preceded by an economic siege. Since the two people fall together, the siege of the United States and British Commonwealth nations will last a total of 390 days, or about 13 months, and for the last 40 days. The nation of Israel will also be besieged, according to Gerald Flurry, head of the Philadelphia Church of God. This interpretation was also given by Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong, through whom God founded the modern era of his church. This has been by my interpretation as well since about 2007, when I wrote the first draft of my ebook, World and Bible Prophecy. The second prophecy that talks about the defeat of the British, American, and Jewish people, followed by the Great Tribulation and inflicted on them, is the four horsemen of the apocalypse prophecy in Revelation 6. That prophecy states, verses 1 to 11, "And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, Come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts saying, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see that you hurt not the oil and the wine. And when you had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the people of the fourth beast say, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto him over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. We know that we have reached the time of delay no longer, as stated in Revelation 10 verse 6, so that the end of the end time prophecies can begin. The very first of these events is pictured by the 4 seals of the book of Revelation, chapter 6 verses 1 to 8, which are a description of world war and the famines and diseases that accompany it. The very next event after the world war is pictured by the 5th seal in Revelation 9 verse 11. And when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under this altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God, and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, Lord, holy and true, do you not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them. And it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants, who also are their brethren that should be killed as they were, should be fulfilled. These verses describe the martyrdom of members of God's church, which we know occurs in the Great Tribulation, which is a time period of 3.5 years, immediately following the defeat of the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel at the hands of a German-led Europe and their allies. People in the Great Tribulation are the last 1/3 of Ezekiel 5 verse 2, which states, And a third part you shall scatter in the wind, and I will draw out a sword after them. These are the scriptures we have to harmonize to get a correct picture of how and when the conquest of the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel will take place, and how many of their people will lose their lives in the process. We also need to keep in mind that the fulfillment of end of the end time events is at hand. According to Church of God calculations, we have already crossed the 6,000 years since Adam and Eve's creation. Therefore, end of man's age has come. In my February 22nd, 2023 video titled Part 1, Third World War, Bible prophecy shows start of the war is very near. I also explained from the last hour prophecy in 1 John 2 verses 18 to 19. The time for end of the end time events to begin has arrived. In the same video, I explained that the Revelation 10:6 prophecy about no delay any longer and fulfillment of end time events also indicates that the Third World War pictured by Revelation 6 can begin at any time. The Germans and Chinese, through German masquerader prophets, know that the time for the start of the Third World War involving the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel has come, and their defeat is preceded by an economic siege. That's why Germany and China are now ready to begin an economic siege of these nations. Here then are the key elements in the prophecies in Revelation 6 and Ezekiel 5 verses 1 to 2 that must be harmonized. Number 1. Revelation 6:4 states, "And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword." The key phrases are take peace from the earth and that they should kill one another. This means that the economic siege will involve many nations, and there will be plenty of resistance from the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel, as China, Germany, and India should expect Xi Jinping should give up his Sheikh Jili, who was famous as a builder of castles in the air, his type of dreams, and expect that the United States has become so rotten that China can just nudge it and it will roll over and die for China and Germany to walk in and occupy the land. However, there is a possibility that conflicts in other parts of the world may break out, such as Muslim and other terrorists starting conflicts and fighting starting because of territorial disputes between nations. The reason is that the restraint that the USA, British Commonwealth nations, and other nations have provided through the UN will no longer be present. Number 2. Other key phrase in Revelation 6 verse 8 is, "Power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword and with hunger and with death and with the beasts of the field." The Church's traditional interpretation of this prophecy was that 1/4 of the world's population could be destroyed. But careful reading of the scriptures indicates that the deaths will occur in the fourth part of the earth, which likely implies land area. China, Canada, United States, Australia, New Zealand, White South Africa, Germany, and the United Kingdom, Taiwan and North India, mainly the original Punjab state, which includes the state of Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh in India, and the Punjab state in Pakistan, occupy approximately a fourth part of the land area of the earth. These countries will likely experience most of the killings proposed. But I will not be dogmatic about this. Fourth part of the earth could also mean population of the earth. Only God can know for sure how this prophecy will be fulfilled. Number 3. The first 4 seals picture a world war in which the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel are the main targets. Since the 5th seal pictures the Great Tribulation, which is also pictured by the third 1/3 of the population of the countries in Ezekiel 5 verse 2, it implies that all the deaths pictured by the first 4 seals occur before the Great Tribulation begins, meaning during the economic siege of the 30-day war immediately following. Ezekiel 5 verse 2 states, "You shall burn with fire a third part in the midst of the city when the days of the siege are fulfilled. And you shall take a third part and smite about it with a knife, and a third part shall you scatter in the wind, and I will draw out a sword after them." Now, there is no difference of opinion about how the second and third third of the population of the United States, British Commonwealth and nations, and Israel will be dealt with. A second 1/3 of the population will be killed in the 30-day war that will result in the defeat of these nations. The third 1/3 refers to the remaining 1/3 of the population that will be captured alive and sold as slaves around the world. In all the commentaries, there is also no difference of opinion about the interpretation of the first one-third perishing by fire. All use the verse Ezekiel 5:12 to interpret it first with one hand, which states, "A third part of you shall lie with me with my pestilence, and with famine shall be consumed in the midst of you, and a third part shall fall by the sword round about you, and I will scatter a third part into all the winds, and I will draw out a sword after them." Thus, verse 12 is stating how the threefold division of the population by one-third will perish, which is similarly stated in verse 2. That's why it may seem reasonable to conclude that the third one-third being burnt by fire in the midst of the city when the days of the siege are fulfilled is referring to one-third perishing by pestilence and famine in the midst of the city as stated in verse 12. The pulpit commentary states about the one-third burnt in the city with fire when the days of the siege are fulfilled. The symbolism receives its interpretation in Ezekiel 5, verse 12. A third part of the people, we need not expect numerical exercises, was to perish in the city of pestilence and famine. Benson's commentary states this signified the destruction of the inhabitants within the city by famine and pestilence. For both famine and pestilence may be said to burn as they make great havoc and consume as much fire. Jameson Fawcett Brown Bible commentary states fire in Ezekiel 5:2 being explained in Ezekiel 5:12 to mean pestilence and famine. Matthew Henry's concise commentary states one part must be burned in the midst of the city, denoting the multitudes that should perish by famine and pestilence. Therefore, interpretation of the first one-third being burnt by fire in the midst of the city can mean that one-third will perish due to race riots, fires being deliberately set in sections of cities, with armed gangs roaming cities, while others band together to defend themselves with guns, resulting in breakdown of law and order and infrastructure, leading to famine and diseases, in no small part due to the economic siege of the United States of the United Arab Republic. I want to add a strong word of caution here. Masquerader prophets Gerald Flurry of the Philadelphia Church of God and David Pack of the Restored Church of God have made a commitment to the German and German masquerader side by partitioning in the midst of a church member. After they did that, their families changed, their priorities changed. Germans likes to keep the truth to themselves, but then deny to deceive others to drive them away from the truth with cunningly devised lies, half-truths and distortions of the truth, all mixed with small amounts of truth. Therefore, whether Gerald Flurry and David Pack are writing about prophecy in their writings of the public is designed to deceive the readers. The interpretations of prophecy they believe in are shared previously among themselves and not with the public. There is another possibility of a different interpretation. The first one-third are burnt by fire in the midst of the city when the days of the siege are fulfilled. All the commentaries miss this. It seems that the destruction of by one-thirds in Ezekiel 5:2 takes place after the siege is completed. This means that some people in our nation will perish in the civil war during the siege. Then the destruction by one-thirds occurs for the remaining population, which will still be a large step of the population. Now, I've read 55 translations of Ezekiel 5:2, and all agree that the first one-third are burnt by fire in the midst of the city, wherein the second of the third are fulfilled, completed. All of them mean that what happens to the air occurs after the siege is over, completed, or ended. In my ebook World and Bible Prophecy, available free on my religion website www.churchofgodmessage.com, I explain the discrepancy between Ezekiel 5:2 and 5:12 by saying that Ezekiel 5:2 implies to Israel. Meanwhile, USA and British Commonwealth nations, where Ezekiel 5:12 applies to Judah, meaning the Jewish state of Israel. I am staying with my presentation. So this is how these prophecies can be harmonized. We have reached the time of delay no longer. Already in the prophecies in Revelation 6, meaning the word war against the United States, British Commonwealth nation, and Israel can begin at any time. Number two, the war that will defeat the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel will be preceded by a 390-day economic siege of these nations. Then the actual war that will last only 30 days. The economic siege and the 30-day war are pictured by the first four seals of Revelation 6. The red horse of Revelation 6 is prophesied to take peace away from the earth. This means that Germany and China will enforce the economic siege on all nations, which is to be expected, just as the United States is enforcing its regulations, its sanctions on Iran. That will involve all nations fighting. May be necessary to enforce the siege in some cases. In addition, with the resistance of the USA and British Commonwealth nations and other nations can bring through the UN, and with threats in some cases to prevent conflicts from starting, is no longer present. Terrorist group will become active, resulting in civil wars breaking out in many nations. Nations have also started settling scores with neighboring nations. That's how peace could be taken from the earth. During the economic siege, much killing will take place due to the civil war, mainly in the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. But conflicts in other nations will also exact their toll. Number four, after 390 days of the economic siege, the United States and British Commonwealth nations will be so weakened due to famine, diseases, deaths of tens of millions, or close to 100 million people, and the nations hopelessly divided into warring camps, that Germany and its allies will begin the 30-day war by using nuclear weapons to destroy major cities. After all, they want to preserve most of the land to occupy for their own use. The Jewish nation of Israel will not be subjected to nuclear strikes. Then the prophecy in Ezekiel 5 verse 2 will be fulfilled on the remaining population of America, British Commonwealth nations. Thus 1/3 of the remaining population in these nations after the siege will die in the nuclear strike and other fires. Then the armies of the German-led alliance will attack these nations and fight 1/3 of their population. The remaining 1/3 will be captured alive and sold as slaves around the world. In the case of Israel, 40 days of the siege result in famines, diseases, and civil wars between the Palestinians, which will kill 1/3 of the Jewish population. Then German-led Europe and its Muslim and other alliance partners will attack Israel and kill 1/3 of the population. The remaining 1/3 will be captured alive and sold as slaves around the world. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, how Bible prophecy is playing an important role in world affairs, on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini to view and get information on the latest videos.